So the first rule of picking your economics classes is to take econometrics as soon as possible. I think a lot of people look at econometrics and they either don't know what it is or they think it's too hard. And so they wait a long time to take econometrics. But in reality, you can take it much earlier than you probably think. I took my first introductory economics class, and the next semester I was already getting ready for econometrics classes with my first one. That first rule is almost as important as the fourth and fifth rule. That's right, today I'm going to be giving you 5 rules for choosing your economics classes to make sure you're making the most out of your economics education. I know it can be difficult to look at all of the options that you can take for economics, and you just want to be like Hermione Granger out there taking every single one of those classes, but unfortunately, you do not have a time turner. You cannot go through and take all of those things in a single semester. So how do you prioritize these classes? Well, let me give you these 5 rules. And that first rule, take econometrics as soon as possible. Let me dive into that just a little bit more before I get to the next one. When you tell people that you study economics, one of the first questions you're going to get is macro or micro? And your response should be metrics, econometrics. Many people have at least heard of macroeconomics or microeconomics, especially those older generations that are thinking back on their classes and asking you where you are in your education. But nowadays, the most important class that you can take is econometrics. Econometrics is where you start using economics with data analysis. And the reason why you need to be taking this as soon as possible is because that data analytics skill is the one that's in high demand in the market. The sooner that you can get into it, the sooner you can gain those skills. The second rule of choosing your economics classes is to take as much econometrics as possible. This is why it's important for you to take that econometrics class early, because the earlier you take that class, the more econometrics you can get into your schedule. For instance, if there is an applied econometrics class at your school, you need to make that a priority. That is one of the best classes you can take because you're going to start learning about causal inference. You're going to learn those skills that are necessary for understanding research and for doing your own research in the real world. Econometrics really is like magic. Once you learn how to use it, it is amazing all the opportunities it opens up for you. But like magic, you can't just learn it that first time you encounter the spells. You need practice.
It's Leviosa, not Leviosa.
So if you take as much econometrics as possible, you're going to be able to dive into this and you're going to be able to master it. And here's one tip for you. This is a bonus tip, not a rule, but it turns out that a lot of the field courses are actually econometrics classes in disguise. If you take a labor economics class or a development economics class, you are going to be doing something with econometrics. Speaking of field economics courses, let me give you the third rule. That is, all economics field courses are good except for the Marxist classes. Now, most schools don't offer Marxist economic programs in their economics departments. You might find those in other departments, and there's a reason for that. We as economists understand that Marxist economics is stuck in the 19th century. Back in the 1800s, they had ideas about how the economy worked, and since then, we have learned so much. And Marxist economics classes are stuck in the 1800s. You need to get up to the modern economy. Speaking of being stuck in the 1800s, did you know that no one from the 1800s has ever subscribed to market power? Do you want to be like people in the 1800s, or do you want to be like the modern economy? If so, go ahead and subscribe. One last point on this Marxist part before I talk a little bit more about the other field courses. The questions that Marxist economics courses are interested in are important questions. They just don't have good answers in those classes. You can get a lot of those answers in other economics field classes. If you're interested in class struggle or the elite and their effect on the economy, go take a political economy course. If you're interested in the plight of the worker and how workers' wages are set, go take a labor economics course. If you're interested in the history of capitalism and economic systems, go take an economic history course. There are so many field courses available for you. If you're interested in those topics, go take it from the good ones, not from the bad one. Speaking of the good ones, I'm serious when I say that every economics field course has something awesome in it. It's like there's an archipelago of tropical islands of field courses, and they all have their beautiful beaches where you can just love that field. If you're into development economics, you can go sit on the beach and learn about not only the RCT methods, but you can learn about education in developing countries. You can learn about misallocation. You can learn about so many cool topics that they just like fire up my imagination. Or you can go into labor economics. You can think about education economics in that class, or health economics. You can think about gender disparities in pay. So many cool topics in labor economics. Don't get hung up on the field courses. Take the ones that are most interesting to you personally, because they are all good and they will all serve you well in your career. Now that, of course, brings us to the fourth rule, which is on the margin, choose the best teacher. Just because every field course is good doesn't mean that every teacher is good. And there are times when you might think a field course sounds interesting, but if you're matched with a bad teacher, it's not going to be a great experience for you. I have a story about this from graduate school. I am in my third year of graduate school. I'm done with my official classes, but I have this opportunity to develop my skills and understanding by taking classes in economics or even outside of the department. And as I'm looking at these classes, I look outside of the department and I see a class directly related to the research topics I'm interested in. And I think this could be a really good opportunity. I don't have many commitments this semester. Why don't I dive into this topic a little deeper? I go to the class, the syllabus looks fascinating, but then I'm clearly not matched with this teacher. The second week of that class, I asked a question that was related to economics and the topic that we were talking about. And this teacher clearly did not think that this economics approach was appropriate for the question that we were looking at. Now, a lot of people thought that this was a great teacher, and I have no doubt that this teacher works for a lot of people. But for me personally, there was not a match, and I knew that it was not going to be a good semester if I stuck with that class. You might have a similar experience. You might look at game theory and think, wow, I'm so interested in strategic thinking especially across different environments. But then you get to that class and it ends up being a math class that talks about fixed point theorems and really dives into complex math rather than the intuition of the strategic thinking. That is a teacher preference. You can get some game theory classes that are like that. Instead, go take classes from professors that you know are interesting, who are engaged in the topic, and who are going to deliver a good experience for you. And the great thing is there's a lot of opportunity to learn that material outside of the class. What I ended up doing with that class, where I was not a great match, I decided to just take that syllabus and study it on my own, and I gained a lot from that. That's actually a really good segue into my fifth rule for choosing your economics classes, and that is the best learning happens outside of your classes. When I was an undergraduate, I spent almost all of my time in the economics computer lab. I gained a reputation. When I went to graduate school, I actually saw a student from my undergrad, and he asked me, "Are you that kid who was always in the computer lab?" And I was like, yes, I am, because I was sitting there doing research for a professor. And when I wasn't doing research for that professor, I was involved with the other students and just getting to know them and talking about economics. That is where so much of my learning advanced. I learned how to apply the skills that I was getting in those classes. I learned what were good ideas and what were bad ideas. And that's the great part about economics. Most of the resources you need are available to you already. It's not like you're taking biology and you need a lab to do experiments, or it's like you're an engineer and you need a CNC machine to make the parts that you want. With economics, if you have a computer, which you're watching this video, so you must have access to a computer, you can get access to data and the tools that you need to analyze it, and you can start going to work with economics. A great example of how you can start applying those economics and econometric skills outside of the classroom is this video I recently did on the price of the PS5 and the Xbox Series X. I collected that data on my own, I did the analysis at home, and it's something that anybody watching these videos could do. By the way, I had the audacity to use some secret words in this video, and if you know which words those were, put them in the comments below or give me new words to use in my next video, and we'll see you then.